This is Swarfcast. I'm Noah Graff. Welcome to my first TED Talk. Okay, maybe one day. Have you guys ever bought a used machine? Maybe you're afraid to. Maybe you got burned in the past. Today, I'm going to give you a few tips for buying used machines. I'm Noah Graff, by the way. I've been buying and selling machines in our family business, Graff Pinkert, for the last 14 years. We specialize in turning equipment, specifically screw machines and CNC Swiss machines. Business was started by my grandfather 80 years ago. Also, I've been in the media business for 20 years, working on a blog, magazine, Today's Machining World, and for the last 6 years had a podcast about the machining business. I've made some awesome deals in my career and many horrible ones too. I mean, many is a relative word, but what I've learned in all my years of buying and selling machines, treasure hunting, as I often like to call it, is that you can't just buy a machine because it looks nice, because the price seems okay. You have to understand the machine you're buying. And one of the best ways to do that is by talking to people. And you have to talk to the right people. Now, today, I'm going to zero in on one of the key parts of buying a machine that's often overlooked, and that's communication. And the first thing you have to do is you have to network. You have to find people in your industry who know the machines that you're looking at. Now, maybe you're already an expert. Maybe you already have this machine and you're good. But still, you need to know what age of machine you want. How new do you want it to be? Do you want it to be pretty new and you're willing to pay a premium for it? Or maybe you're interested in buying something a little older because you feel pretty good about fixing it. So you have to find that out. And there's a lot of nuances to that. Maybe some of the parts are going to go obsolete. Maybe it's just too hard of a machine if it's old. There are so many things that it really helps to know about the machines before you buy them. And so you need to find people to ask. Now, look, I've been doing this a long time, and I have people in the machining business, both dealers and end users, who I go to when I need a certain specific machine. For instance, I have somebody whenever I need Tornos machines, I go to them and they used to work for Tornos. They can tell me what something should be worth. They can tell me if something's outdated. And I mean, we have been burned many times just because we didn't ask somebody. You know, I have somebody who tells me about indexes, somebody who tells me about robots. And the more people you have, the better. And I know we have an advantage that we've done a lot of deals with people, so we have contacts. But look, we're all on LinkedIn here. And what I've found is there are a lot of people out there, either online forums or LinkedIn, that really want to help. But just messaging people, it's just not good enough. And what I've realized is that, you know, you do these live calls on LinkedIn and it creates an intimacy. It can really, I don't know, it can make somebody trust you. What I've also found, and you know, science has shown this, is that people like helping people. People like sharing their expertise. There's a very famous story about Ben Franklin where there was this guy he was at odds with. He was in some legislature, and I guess they were sort of rivals, and he wanted to make the relationship better. And so He went and asked him if he could borrow a book. This guy was a very avid book collector. And he borrowed this. The guy allowed him to. The guy lent him this rare book, and Benjamin Franklin returned it a week later with a really nice note. And the story goes that after that, they had a very close relationship. It's a legend, but what I found, it's totally true. And I feel that way too when I've given advice to people. Obviously, you can't take constantly and you can't annoy people, but people want to help. So after you've talked to these experts, you've developed some relationships, hopefully you come in with an idea of the kind of machine you want. Now, you look online, and, again, I could do a whole nother talk about finding stuff online, treasure hunting, if you will. Let's just say, you go to Google, you find a bunch of dealers, you find somebody, maybe you find an end user advertising the machine. And then it's time to investigate. It's time to find out about this machine because, as I said before, if you just find a nice looking machine and you email them, which is the easy thing to do, you email them, you get an automatic quote, and then a lot of people just want to email about price and they want to just keep everything anonymous. But you can't do that. That's not what the professionals do. If you want to make a great deal, you're going to have to call them up. And when you call that seller up, the seller is going to be appreciative. They're going to know that you're serious about what you're talking about, that you really actually care about this machine and you're not just going to get a competitive bid. So you call the guy or the woman and you need to find out the story of this machine. Every used machine has a story. Why is this used machine on the market? Was somebody just, they had bought a new machine, they have a lot of money, they like to refresh their machines, so they bought the machine and then were exchanging it? Maybe that's the case. Maybe a job ran out and it's a late model machine and it's really good. Or maybe, the machine was worn out and that's why the dealer was able to get it at a good deal. Now, I'll tell you firsthand. I've got an example here of a machine with a complicated story, and I see there's a few dealers watching this, and maybe you guys will even recognize this machine. I bought it in an auction. We bought it in an auction. So this is a Herco mill. I don't know, it's probably only 10 years old, which in used machinery, that's not too bad. We bought it in an auction for what seemed like a good price. And the reason it was being auctioned off was because it had been in a fire. There was a whole shop with a whole bunch of Hercos. We went and we picked the 3 that looked the least damaged. There were a few that looked a little melted, but we picked the ones that we thought looked good. We brought them back to our shop. We got them working. And then it was time to sell them. Now, we were completely honest with people about the machines being in a fire. We didn't have to be. We could have just said, we got these machines and look at them. They look nice. Come inspect. And here you go. But we told the people. However, not every seller is going to do that. And if you talk to them on the phone, if you go see that in person, there's a better chance that you're going to find out the story. Ask a lot of questions. Interrogate them. Find out the history of every machine. And, just like this, a lot of the machines have a fascinating story behind them. And then the other great thing about talking to people on the phone is it creates the opportunity for serendipity. Now, people who listen to our podcasts, Swarfcast, they'll know that I'm sort of obsessed with serendipity. And that's one of the things I like about the used machinery business. For people who that's not really in their lexicon, serendipity is luck. It's getting lucky, making your own luck. Now, when you call people on the phone, that's when you start talking about other machines. Sometimes people, they know of a machine and it's not on their website. Maybe it belongs to somebody else. Now, for instance, I've got a good story about this. This is a machine we had for a long time. This is a Tsugami BO205 Swiss machine. It looks pretty nice. We got it in an auction. It was a terrible machine. This was an absolute case of buying a machine in an auction that we hadn't talked to somebody about. It looked fine, and we bought it. It sucked. However, there was something good that came out of this machine, both for us and for the person who called us about it. I found it online, and either I called him or he called me. I was really excited about him potentially buying this machine because it's just a really hard one to sell. And I asked him, how interested are you in this machine? And he says, shoot, I wasn't even really looking for that model. I need a 32 millimeter machine. And I was like, damn. And it's this guy in Idaho. He makes firearms, stuff for firearms. And, he's the right kind of customer in that he really had the work for this machine. He was ready to buy a machine. It's just not our machine. And then I thought back to a friend of mine, another dealer in California who might be watching this. And I had been talking to him about this machine. This is another Tsugami. This is a Tsugami BO325. Sort of similar to the one I have, but this is a 32 millimeter machine. More expensive, and as you can see, his was nicer than the one I had anyways. This machine, though, happens to be a difficult one to sell, but it's a really nice machine. I call him up. I say, look, I actually have a live one for this machine. What can you do for me? Can you give me a discount? He gives me a nice discount. I go, call the guy from Idaho back, close the deal, do a whole deal in a week, make a very decent score. But this isn't about me making the sale. This is about the buyer. If I hadn't talked to the buyer on the phone, he would have never found out about that machine. So the serendipity came just from talking. That's such a beautiful thing when things come out of nowhere. So you've got the story of the machine. The serendipity has occurred. And now it's time to negotiate. Now, and this is another really important part of calling somebody on the phone. You can negotiate on email. You can go back and forth with prices, and it might work, but you're probably not going to get as good a deal as you could have. And you're not going to be able to feel this person out. You're not going to know how good a deal you could have gotten. So you start negotiating. Now, first of all, you're going to have this expert knowledge because you've already talked to them on the phone. You've gotten the story of the machine. You've gotten a network of really, really smart people who have told you all the pitfalls that can happen with said machine. And so you're armed with some ammunition. Then you go in, and the good thing, if you're the buyer, because that's what we're talking about here, we're talking about buying, it's often kind of considered standard for the seller to give you a price. And that's a great thing, even if the price seems high, because it gives you something to start at, to negotiate with. You've got all this ammunition now about the machine, the age of the machine, the condition of the machine, the history of the machine, all the flaws that could be with the machine. And you can start going at it. And you can give a number you have in your mind. You've come in, hopefully you've got an idea of what you could spend on this machine. And my suggestion is not to give your maximum price unless that's your style, and that could work as well. And a lot of people are watching this who have negotiation experience. They may totally have different philosophies that work for them, and I'm not going to pretend that I know everything. This is where I'm coming from. When you start talking about price, emotions come in, and you can start getting a sense of the person. You can start feeling, are they calm when you come up with a price? Are they calm when they give you a price? Maybe they look a little nervous. Maybe you give them a price and they start getting pissed off. You're going to get a feel that you'd never be able to get if you were just going back and forth online. And again, this is totally going to be another talk just about the negotiation, where I'm just going to give you the abridged version. Now, sometimes you get into a place where you have a seller and the seller doesn't want to tell you what the price is, but you really want this machine. And you're hoping that you can get it for a good price. And I've been in this situation many times. It's difficult, but then it's time for you to name price, and you don't want to screw this up. Now, there's a trick I have. It's called, well, I call it the would it be crazy trick. So, for instance, say you're going to buy an index machine. This is a CNC machine that we often work with. You're going to buy an index CNC lathe. Maybe it's a C200 machine. Your ideal price for this machine would say be $150,000. That would be a steal on this machine, potentially. Depends how old it is, obviously. You don't want to give your maximum, but at the same time, you don't want to insult the person by giving them a lowball offer. Some people might just come in and again, if you do this online, on an email, as everybody knows, emails can be totally taken wrong. So some people might just go, I'll give you 90. Maybe the owner of the machine is expecting 170. Maybe he's expecting more. I don't know. But it's gonna rub him wrong if you just name a price out there. And a price that you think is sensible, even if you're not trying to lowball them, the seller may think is ridiculous. So you say, well, would it be crazy to sell this machine for 90? And you say it in a nice, non-threatening way, and the guy can go, well, actually, you're in the right neighborhood. Or they can say, yeah, it is crazy. And you go, okay, I see where we're at right now. And then you can go from there. The thing is, the start is having a price out there. If you have a price out there, it means things are real. So look, dealers like me, when we're buying and selling a machine, we have a different goal than people who are going to be manufacturing parts. We're going to be looking for a different kind of price, potentially. We're going to be wanting to protect ourselves that this machine is going to have good resale value. An end user, I sometimes I just want to tell people this, and I just want to, and I do tell this to people, and maybe they're rolling their eyes, but I say, look, you're buying this machine to make thousands of parts, hundreds of thousands of parts, to keep it here, in your shop for years. You're not just buying this machine to flip it. So before you just get hung up on $1,000, $2,000 here, I want you to think long term. What might seem unfair, what might seem like a stupid deal because you heard somebody else got the machine for something else somewhere else, that doesn't really matter, does it? This is an investment. This is a long-term investment. And look, I'm talking to you from a seller's standpoint, and there's so much emotion that goes into this. And maybe the person selling it has rubbed you wrong and makes you want to do this. But this is something you really need to think about. You also just need to think about, could this machine go away if you just try to be, as we say, too cute? I had a machine recently I was going to try to buy with a seller, with another reseller, and we knew the deal was good, but we were just a little too afraid to pull the trigger. And we could have done very well on this machine, and we ended up losing it just because we weren't sure. Could we make a better deal? Were we being stupid to take X deal? And eventually we gave the asking price and we had already lost it. Somebody else had already gone in and bought the machine. So that's just something to chew on when you're in that crunch time and you're duking it out with the people selling the machine. So to wrap this up, remember, you don't buy a machine just because it looks pretty online and the price seems like it's in your budget. I've done this before, and I'm sure I'm going to do it again. I hope not too many times, but you shouldn't do it. Oh, I hate to use the word should. It's a bad idea to do it. Call the person up, do your research, get people on your side, negotiate on the phone, and it's going to serve you well. Well, this has been super fun. And if anybody wants to buy any precision machining used equipment, specifically turning equipment, screw machines, Swiss machines, weird machines, I recommend you call us or email us. Go online, Graf Pinkert. That's grafpinkert.com. And if you want to check out our blog, it's Today's Machining World. And the podcast is called Swarfcast. It's a lot of fun doing this, and I look forward to the next one.